I am David Such, and I live in Jacksonville, Texas. It's a little bit southeast of Dallas. And I've been researching near death experiences for about 15 years now. I've heard, probably in the neighborhood of 1,000, 1,200 testimonies over those years. And I published a book about it called God Took My Clothes. I'm also a certified spiritual counselor. And I got into near death experiences back in 2007. I was at a time in my life where I was making good money as an engineer, and I came down with chronic tendonitis throughout my body. And it was very painful and debilitating, and I fell into a very deep depression. And so I was prayed for by uh, probably a dozen churches or so over the years, and probably hundreds of people, maybe thousands, I don't know. And I still continued to get worse. And I even spent 3 years in a mobility scooter because I was having such a hard time walking without pain. And I've since then mostly healed. I still have a little bit of healing left to go, but I've got my health back. But back then, that deep depression caused a loss of faith. I was a Christian. I was raised Catholic and later became a Christian. And I thought that one of two things was going on. God's not answering the prayer. Why? Why is God not healing me if there really is a God? And I thought one of two things is happening. Either there is no God, which I didn't think that was the case, or there's a God, but I'm the bad son. I'm the son that he's embarrassed of. I'm the screw up. I'm the failure. He doesn't want to have anything to do with it. I'm the son he's disowning because I'm not good. And that was a very painful conclusion to come to. And it was during that time when YouTube was fairly new. It was only 2 years old, I think, back in 2007. And a video came up in my feed. I wasn't even looking for near-death experiences, and I clicked on it. And it was a man who had a near-death experience. He was an atheist, visited the afterlife and asked many questions. And that started me on this long journey. And then finally, in 2017, I finished the book and published it about 2 years ago in 2021. And so I really had the joy and pleasure of hearing all these experiences and about the beauty of heaven. So let's just go over first the basic near-death experience, and then we're going to talk about some of the attributes and what heaven's like. And then hopefully we can have time to conclude with what humanity's doing at this time and where we're going and what our role is in the creation process, because we're all partners. We're all little facets of God in this giant family business called creation. And we're all helping that creation process. And human beings are often not aware that we're part of the creation process. We're partners with God in creating. And that's what we do down here. We create down here. We build cities and businesses and families and partnerships and all sorts of things. So we are master creators. It's what we're good at. So the near-death experience. So the most common near-death experience is a person dying either in an accident or from a heart attack, or possibly in the hospital, surgery gone wrong. Those are probably the most common. There's some less common ones: stabbings, shootings, guys get struck by lightning, industrial accidents, medical procedures not going right, things like that. Electrocutions are fairly common. And the person finds themselves outside of their own body. And they're often sort of above and looking down. Some people will recognize their own body and realize, I'm dead, and that's my body. And others do not recognize their own body because the spirit world is quite different. And they say, we're always used to seeing ourselves on a screen, a computer screen or a TV screen or in a picture, and it's always 2D. And when they see their body in 3D, they don't always recognize it or see it. And then, if it's in the hospital and they revive them, or sometimes at the scene of an accident, they'll go back into their body. Some of them start going through a tunnel, and they will often hear or be told, it's not your time, go back. And then they're back in their bodies. So that's the most common. Now, some have far more extensive near-death experiences, and they're less frequent, but they are quite common. And those are the ones where it's interesting and we learn a lot and we can bring a lot of messages back from the other side of the veil. These people, they see that light, they get drawn to it like a magnet. Usually they say it's a little pinpoint of white light or golden energy at first, and it very rapidly gets big. They describe the travel as being faster than light. And they will arrive in this light that is 10,000 times brighter than the sun. It's not at all harmful to the eyes like it would be in this world. And they describe what is my favorite part of these experiences, which is they describe a love that cannot be described in human words. Even the word love is completely inefficient, inadequate to describe what they feel there. Now, people try and explain it, but all we have is analogies. So, for instance, one man said, think of the 100 happiest moments in your life and put them all into one moment. You still don't come close as how good it feels to be there. Another person said, imagine the strongest love you've ever felt in your life and multiply it by about 500 or 1,000. And that's what it feels like to be there. And another man said, well, imagine if you're here on Earth and you had a magic lamp with a genie and you didn't have just 3 wishes. You have unlimited wishes your whole life. You can wish for anything you can have on Earth. You still wouldn't have a life anywhere near as good as you are there. Now, not everybody arrives in this light, but almost all of them describe this love and this peace and this sense of purposefulness, that everything that happens down here has a purpose, a sense of safety, a sense of connectedness, that we're more connected than separate. Often people will describe a feeling of familiarity. I remember that this is where I came from. I remember that this is my true home. Oh, I forgot all about that. I live here. I was just playing the role of a human being on Earth. Now, some people, because every near-death experience is different, and the reason that's done is because each near-death experience is to make the person feel comfortable and teach them what they need to know. So if a person is a big fan of nature, they may be brought into one of nature's beautiful gardens. Or if a person was very close to their grandfather who died before them, they may be met by their grandfather. One guy was even a big fan of Peter the Apostle. So he got to heaven and they had Peter there to greet him. They can appear any way they want in heaven. So there's generally no old age. So people look young and beautiful and fantastic. But often, somebody like Peter may decide to show up the way he looked on Earth, which is probably what he did, because this guy said, yeah, I met Peter and he looked a bit shaggy looking. So anyway, the people sometimes meet guardian angels or various spirits. Some people meet their higher self. So the bigger part of themselves that's always there on the other side of the veil. And even that's an amazing thing. They say, I mistook it for God. And, they get told, no, God's a lot bigger and brighter than that. That's just the higher you, which they have a hard time believing. Now, let's talk about some of the senses. There are not really levels in heaven any more than there are levels of love. How many kinds of love do you have for your child? Well, you can't really divide it up. It's just love. It's this soup of love, of many different expressions of love. Well, same thing with the levels of heaven. There's not really levels, but we tend to think linearly. We tend to put things in boxes as human beings. And so just for the purposes of conversation, we're going to say level. So the first level of heaven is kind of laid out like Earth.
Sorry.
Yes.
I've heard people saying that there are different dimensions. Is that what you mean by the same levels? Because
there's different dimensions.
Yeah, there are different dimensions, and based on the dimension you go, that's going to determine the kind of experience you get. So I don't know if
Some people, I've heard a few near-death experiencers who went to the higher dimensions, and even the first level is very difficult to describe in human words. The higher levels are completely indescribable, completely ineffable. So, not much we can say about those. But that first level, or maybe it's a dimension, like you say, I'm really not sure. I know there are many dimensions. But that first level is kind of laid out like Earth. So there are roads and houses and buildings and trees and parks and gardens and waterfalls and giant trees taller than our big sequoias and redwoods. And it's an amazingly beautiful place. There are flowers that glow with their own light and sing. And there are colors that we don't have here. So I would hear a lot about people come back and say, I saw colors, beautiful, bright, vibrant pastels that don't exist here on Earth. And I say, well, what colors? And they say, well, I can't tell you. If a person is colorblind, they can only see in black and white. You can't tell them what red and green and blue and yellow is. They don't know what it is. They have no experience with that. So the reason there are so many colors is because here on Earth, we have 3 primary colors, red, blue, and yellow. And various mixtures of those three primary colors form all the colors of the rainbow. Well, in that first level of heaven, they have over 80 primary colors. So just the colors are fantastic. Now, you do have hearing in heaven, but it's not for communication. You can talk and listen, but there's a mind-to-mind communication that most of those in heaven use. And it's very efficient, and it's impossible to have a misunderstanding. Your hearing is more for the beautiful music of heaven. And Don Piper, in his book 90 Minutes in Heaven, describes the music of heaven. He's probably got the best description of the music. And I put that section of his book in my book. So if you get my book, you'll get to read that description of the music. And it's beautiful and amazing. And just the sights and the sounds and the feeling of connection is just wonderful. It's everything about it is just so perfect. Now, some people talk with guides or relatives or the light, God. They don't have to be told that this beautiful bright light is God. It's like the universe reverberates his name. It's so powerful and so loving beyond words that, it's God. And God will say, we're going to give you a life review. Now, not everybody has a life review. I think it's about a fourth of the people have a life review. And this life review, it's not a judgment. It's not a condemnation. It's basically them showing you how you affected other people. So in this world, we are always one person. I'm me, seeing with my eyes, smelling with my nose, hearing with my ears. And in this life review, you become all the other people you interacted with, as if you were them, seeing through their eyes, hearing through their ears, speaking through their mouth. And you get to feel exactly how your behavior affected them. So, for instance, one man, he got in a fist fight with another person. And he was a big, strong guy, and he beat up this other guy. He hit him 34 times and knocked him out. And there he is in his life review again, raining down punches on this guy. And at the same time, he was that guy. He felt his nose break. He felt his teeth break. He felt every one of the 34 punches. He felt the humiliation this guy experienced, the shame of being beaten up in a fight. He felt the apprehension this guy had going out in public for a while after that. And it works the other way too for something good. One guy worked in hospice, caring for the elderly who were, near end of life. And some of these elderly people didn't have visitors. And he was the only one that, talked to him and cared for him and was showing love and compassion. And he got to feel that from their perspective, and he said it was like emotional fireworks. So whatever we do, every word we say, every action we take with another human being has an effect, good or bad. And they show us that effect. Now, there's no condemnation. When you're in that light and love, or with your spiritual guides, or up there in heaven or whatever, it's really clear. You are loved unconditionally. It doesn't matter what you did, good or bad in your life. You're loved just the same. So there's nothing we can do to earn the love of God or earn the love of creation. It's ours because we're connected to it all, and we're part of it all. And the main lesson in these life reviews is just one word that I've already mentioned a lot of times, and you can probably guess what it is: love. On the other side of the veil, they don't care about career, accomplishments, choice of sexuality, goals, status in society, religion. They're not concerned about any of that. All they care about is, did you love yourself? Did you love your fellow man? Were you kind? Were you compassionate? Were you cruel? Were you selfish? Were you manipulative? And the times when we do good things, the people watching these life reviews, they cheer, almost like a football game. You give a homeless guy a meal, and then you find out in your life review he hadn't eaten in 2 days. And you feel all those good feelings of having food for the first time in 2 days. And the angels around you cheer. That's what we like to see. And then when you're cruel and selfish and manipulative, even if you didn't mean to be, and you harm another, they can be not disappointed, but it's just sad. So the whole purpose basically is life reviews to show us what many of the religious texts say. And I'll quote the Bible. I'm not a Christian, but I'll quote the Bible because I think it contains a lot of spiritual truths. Love God, love your neighbor with all your heart, mind, and soul. That's what it's about. It's all about love.
How does religion fit into all this? Because we all believe that I'm a Christian, so I believe that Jesus is the way. But I have a friend who is a Muslim, and he believes that Muhammad is the way. My grandfather, before he died, he worshipped he worshipped idols, and he believed that was the way. So how does religion plays into all this, into NDEs? Is it
Religion is
is it that it's only Christians that are going to be there, or everybody's accepted?
No, they're not really concerned with religion, and religion is more like a tool. It's a tool to bring you closer to God. There are many paths up the mountain, not just one. So religion is like Captain Cook's brew. In the late 1700s, when these ships would embark on long voyages lasting several years, sometimes up to half or even 2/3 of the crew would die from a disease called scurvy. Now, scurvy comes from not getting enough vitamin C in your diet. So they would have things like rice and beans and maybe even, dried meat and that kind of thing, beef jerky and that kind of thing. But they wouldn't get fresh fruits and vegetables. And so when that happens for a long time, your body doesn't have enough vitamin C, you die. It can kill you. Well, Captain Cook successfully circumnavigated the globe in the late 1700s. And that had been done before, but this was momentous because this was something different. Not a single one of his crew died from scurvy. Well, how did he do that? He served this thing called Captain Cook's brew, and it had all these weird ingredients, malt and vinegar and all this stuff. But one of the ingredients was lemon syrup. And lemon syrup, of course, is loaded with vitamin C. So if you drank Captain Cook's brew, you didn't get scurvy. But it was really only one active ingredient that saved you, and that was the vitamin C. And that's the way it is with religions. There are so many beautiful, great religions. Hinduism, Buddhism, Christianity, Judaism, Muslim, all these great religions. And they all believe in similar things. Brotherly love, charity for the impoverished, kindness, patience, peace, compassion, self-control, good behavior. They're all preaching the same thing. And the active ingredient in any religion is the love of God. And it's there. Now, there may be some religions that have some messed up doctrines or mistaken beliefs. Heaven doesn't care about that. They just don't. And I'm going to use an example from a trans-channeler named Cryon, trans-channeled by Lee Carroll. And this is paraphrased. It's not word for word. But imagine you were a person in a bitter divorce, and your spouse gets custody of the children. And out of hatred, she says, or he says, you're never going to see your kids again. I'm taking them far away. I'm going to hide them, and you're just heartbroken. And you look for your children for years, and the years pass, and then it's been a decade, and now it's been 2 decades, and you've given up in despair, and you think, I'm never going to see my kids again. And then one day the phone rings. It's them. We've been looking for you all these years. We're in your neighborhood right now. We want to come and see you. And of course, you're happy. You're like, yeah, come and see me. This is the happiest day of your life. You're going to see your kids again. So you run outside and wait for the car, and you look, and there's a car coming down the street, and it's them. Now, let me ask you something. Do you care what kind of car it is? Do you care if it's a broken down old car with a lot of problems and a lot of issues, or if it's a really good car in perfect working condition? You don't care. You're just happy your kids came to see you. God does not care if you're in a religion with a lot of mistaken doctrines and bad beliefs or whatever. He's just happy his kids are coming to see him. I mean, imagine it from God's perspective. You send your kid to a faraway land. He's going to forget that he's got a dad, forget that you even exist. And then somehow he manages to remember, oh, I've got this heavenly father. I got this father, and I'm going to give him a call. That means a lot to our Creator when we reach out to him. So it doesn't matter what religion and what tool you use. If you're heart-centered on loving that religion, you're connecting with God. He's happy you came to see him. So I hope that helps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, of course, a lot.
And of course, I love Christianity. They're a very love-focused religion. And really, they're tools. So a lot of the rules religions have, it's to keep us out of trouble, Forgive, well, you hold resentment in your heart. It's really bad for you. You're not supposed to forgive just for the other person's benefit. You're supposed to forgive for your own benefit. So they give us these rules and guidelines. It's almost like a cookie recipe. Well,
Yeah.
if you don't know how to cook, you got to follow a recipe, and religion's got a lot of different recipes.
Yeah, while we're still on religion, because this was a question I intended to ask later. So what about the concept of hell? What have you been, from your experience and from people you've interviewed? Is there hell? Is it real? So what do you make of hell?
Well, hell in the traditional religious concept, I would say, is not real, because we've got this idea that is sort of put on our heads from many of the world's religions, not all, but many of them, which is there's this system of reward and punishment. Like God is this cosmic Santa Claus, he's making a list, he's checking it twice. And, if you're good, you're going to get presents. And if you're bad, you get a lump of coal in your stocking. Only they tell us if you're good, you get eternal bliss in heaven with God. And if you're bad, you get burned in hell forever because you didn't obey your dad. That's not accurate. Hell is not a punishment. It's not a judgment. It's not even a place. It doesn't really exist. But the collective groups of souls, the souls tend to congregate with each other. So lower vibrational souls or lower consciousness souls tend to congregate with each other. And there are people who decide to disconnect partially or completely from God. And when that happens and you disconnect completely from love, all that's left is fear. And so there'll be these environments where the souls there are experiencing pure fear. It's not a punishment. It is a teaching process. We experience the fear, the horror of being disconnected from our family. And that makes the connection to family that much stronger. So the other thing is those experiencing the most difficult situations, whether it's a difficult life on earth or a hellish sort of experiment in the afterlife, a hellish environment in the afterlife, that helps hold the space and create the envelope for the love of heaven to exist. So by our earthly lives and by people experiencing complete separation, it grows love. It's just like, if you're somebody you really love goes away on a long trip for 6 months. Well, when they were living with you and they came home every day, did you jump up and down and run up and hug them? Well, a dog will do that when you show up at home. They're kind of more aware than we are, the way we're supposed to treat people. No, but when they're gone for 6 months, what happens? And they come back. Oh my gosh, it's so good to see you. Give them a big hug and you're so happy. Right. Separation makes that connection stronger when it's reconnected. So we never suffer in vain. So those hellish environments are a choice, either subconscious or consciously of the soul, to experience a partial or complete separation from God or source. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, it does.
Yeah. And it's not permanent. When a soul is ready, they'll all come home. God's not leaving any of his kids out in the cold. That's not love. I would always be confused, when I heard some religious preaching, God loves you. He loves you so much, but if you don't obey, he's going to burn you in hell forever. Wait a minute. That's not love. This is a really difficult planet to be on. It's really difficult to be loving. There's so much negativity and cruelness and meanness and horrible things. And it's really difficult in this environment to be they know that we're going to make mistakes and quote unquote sin. I don't believe in the concept of sin, but they know we're going to behave bad. If you've got children, long before your children are born, they're going to misbehave. And just like a good parent puts up with his child while he's causing problems and breaking things and getting into things, God puts up with us. Okay, you're going to, fight each other and war and you're stealing each other's stuff. And he's just putting up with us and helping us mature. And there's no judgment. You don't get mad at a 2-year-old for breaking something. He didn't know any better.
I stopped believing in hell after I started having kids. Because when you begin to have kids, you see the kind of love you have for your kids. And you can do anything for them. You will gladly take a bullet for them. You gladly die for them. So I begin to wonder if God, and we don't even know how to love compared to God.
No.
If a human like me can love my kid to the extent that I'll be ready to die for them without thinking about it. So it's not possible that a loving God will send his children into eternal damnation. It's not like they're going there for 2 years, 3 years, for eternity. it didn't make any sense to me. And from that time, I've stopped believing in hell. I completely don't believe in hell anymore. But like I now I believe that it's more of a tool for controlling people, to control people. But there are still a lot of people that believes in hell though. So, but yeah, I really don't believe in hell anymore. But like I said, people are there. That's my own opinion. My opinion of my viewers and is different. So that's why I wanted to hear your own opinion about it.
Yeah, I'm kind of on board with you that same way. I don't think it's a punishment, and certainly there can be negative. A lot of people have had negative afterlife experiences, about 5%. So of the 1,000+ testimonies I've heard, it's around 5%. And there was a reason for that. Whether the person has a heavenly or hellish afterlife experience, it always changes them profoundly. And it's probably done that way to give us what we need. Most children will respond if you just encourage them to do the right thing. Well, the hardcore cases, you might have to give them a little slap on the butt, right? A little bit of pain. This is what it feels like to be separated from God. It's basically a place that the collective souls there are responsible for creating, and it's made as scary as possible so that we choose connection. So, yeah, I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Okay, so anyway, that's basically an overview of the near-death experience, the first level of heaven. And sometimes people are told it's not your time and they get sent back. Others are told you have finished your work. You have finished what you set out to do. You can either stay here or you can go back to Earth and do more work. Well, even a mother with a newborn child says, well, I'm not going back there. It's the most wonderful, amazing, fantastic, fun, perfect place. I mean, everybody who sees heaven just for 1 minute wants to stay there forever. They don't want to go back. And then at that point, the spiritual guides or God or whoever they're with may show them, well, this will be the benefit to your family or your friends or your spouse or your children or humanity if you go back. And they show them that. And then generally, of course, if I heard their testimony, they chose to come back. And they decide to come back to do more work, because even though this is a tough job, it's a really important one. We as human beings, and this brings us into our role in creation, we as human beings, when we incarnate into these physical lives, we separate from that perfection. We forget about the love. We don't feel the connection anymore. We come down to these fragile bodies in this scary place where there's fear and danger and all this stuff. By these dangerous adventures we take as souls, we are the engine of growth of creation. It's that incarnating into the souls, which is a huge part of the creation process. And it's also a huge part of holding the space for love. So the work we do here is so important. I'll often have a client in one of my spiritual counseling sessions say, oh, why is life difficult, so difficult down here? Well, you're an expert soul. New souls don't incarnate into Earth. No, they go to a planet where life is easy. You don't come here till you're an expert. Only the best of the best come to Earth. It's that tough. It's the hardest planet to have a life in this entire galaxy. It's one of the 3 hardest in the entire universe, to give you an idea how tough this place is. So when a child just learns how to walk, what do? You take him for a short walk and maybe in the park next to your house or something, or even maybe a walk across the room if he's just learned to walk that day. You don't take him on a hike up Mount Everest. So the first incarnations have to be really easy. So generally it's kind of like the opposite, The first incarnation, you do it on a planet that's highly evolved. They've, mastered world peace. There's no conflict. There's no hatred. There's no strife. There's no anger or jealousy. They've kind of gotten past all that stuff. And so you get used to physical life, and then you take harder and harder challenges. Now, this galaxy only has one, what we're going to call free will planet, and that's Earth. And there's a duality here. There's a love-fear duality. You can choose to sort of distance yourself from love and go into fear. So all the negative emotions, anger, hatred, acts of violence, those are all manifestations of fear. Kindness, charity, love, compassion, those are all manifestations of the same divine energy of love. And by going back and forth between those two, we learn. And not only do we learn, but every species who's spiritually aware in this galaxy learns from our example. So I've given this example in other podcasts. It's like having a giant research lab. So they come up with one cure for cancer. You don't need a dozen research labs. You only need one, because when they get that cure for a specific kind of cancer, they share it with everybody else. So dipping down in the darkness helps propel you towards the light. It's like rocking a car out of the mud. And the further you go back, when you go forward, it goes even further forward. Well, no planet in the history of this galaxy has dipped so far into darkness and then come back out of it, sprung up towards the light. If they went this far down in the darkness and negativity and war and hatred and selfishness, they destroyed themselves. That's not going to happen to us. It was going to happen, and thanks to a lot of help from above, we got past that. So Earth is on a path to become an ascended planet. And that doesn't mean we're all going to be singing Kumbaya and holding hands. We're still going to have our disagreements, but we won't pick up sticks and stones and start killing each other. It'll be like a family that loves each other. The brother and sisters may get in arguments, and they might not even talk to each other for a few days, but they're not going to pick up a gun and start shooting, right? So we're going to resolve our problems without fighting. On this new Earth, this new world of love that's coming in about, I've heard it's about 150 years. There's no set time. We can get there as fast as we want or as slow as we want. The faster we get there, the more painful the change will be. The slower we get there, it'll be easier, but about 150 years. There's going to be corporations that operate with integrity. They're going to have advertisements. Look how good we treat our employees. Look how good we treat our customers. Look how much we care about the environment. And it'll be real. It won't be like the advertising lies you see today, right? And there'll be politicians that won't have this winner take all. We've got this sick political system where, the two sides fight, and then the one side gets in power and they say, okay, we're doing things my way now. No, the politicians of the future are going to do the best for everybody. They're going to be good compromisers, good negotiators, and they're going to be acting with integrity, and they're never going to say a negative word about another person. They're going to be making decisions based on a compassionate heart and love for the people they rule. Well, that's not politics today. And the same with the banking system. The financial system is all messed up. So all these things are going to change, and we're going to have a new Earth. So the first step is going to be peace on Earth. That'll be the first step. And once we stop fighting each other, once we start cooperating, things are really going to get moving. And we are going to become one of those ascended planets. Very similar to Star Trek, no more starvation, no more war, no more money. Everybody's taken care of. Everybody can do what they want. Everybody can use their talents to make a good life for themselves and make a contribution to humanity. So we have a planet that's out of balance right now.
So what's going to lead us to that point? Because from what I'm seeing right now on this Earth, I don't think I would think talking about Third World War right now. Ukraine and Russia are fighting, NATO. So right now, even people are afraid of Third World War. So what's going to happen to bring about that war that you're talking about right now?
Well, there was going to be a Third World War, but that was averted. There's not going to be a world war. We've already passed that point. We're on an irreversible course to an ascended planet. So we're not going to fail. We made it. And there was a big celebration. But what's going to take us there is change. And let me use an analogy. I recall years ago, they were interviewing on TV this very successful Japanese businessman. And the reporter said to him, "How did you get so good at business, at doing business?" He says, "Well, it's just experience." And he says, "Well, how did you what is experience? How did you gain experience?" He goes, "Well, I learned how to make a lot of good decisions." And the reporter says, "Well, how did you learn to make good decisions?" And the man says, "By making a lot of bad decisions." We've got all these systems that aren't working. We're fighting each other. It's not working. Is the war in Ukraine really helping Russia? No, their economy is a disaster. Half the countries in the world have put sanctions against them. It's not working. But there's still people invested in old energy. So the way it's going to come about is mainly through experiencing the pain of doing things the wrong way, the way we've been doing it for centuries. And that's changing. It's getting better. Another way it's going to come about is the children being born. The older generation and the old way of doing things is some of the people in the old generation are going to have to die out. Now, some of the older people are great souls and teachers who are, light workers. soldiers of the light, of goodness and love. But many of the people in positions of power, they're not going to give up their ways. So they're going to have to die off and be replaced by a younger generation. And the younger generation coming in, because we're in a new energy where love and the good guys are being supported, are going to have an easier time. They're going to make some changes. I've heard that in the future, we're going to attack the garbage patch, the plastic patch of garbage in the Pacific Ocean. We're going to clean it up. And there's going to be a massive effort to clean up the air and the soil and the water. And it's going to be painful. Changes are always painful. When you've got to bulldoze your old house because it's, the wood's rotten and the plumbing's leaking and the electric's faulty, the day the bulldozer comes, it seems like the end of the world. But it just seems that way because we don't see what's coming. We don't see that big, beautiful new house. And so it's the children, when they get in positions of power, they're going to make changes. They don't have this mindset of war and fighting each other. Why should I hate those people? Because our grandfathers had a fight? And now I'm supposed to hate this other person because our long dead great-grandfathers hated each other? No, I don't want that. They want schools and jobs and a meaningful place in society and a peaceful environment where there's not chaos and robberies and all this. They don't want all that stuff, and they're going to make the changes. And of course, another way it's going to happen is just people waking up. People just becoming aware of their eternal nature, becoming aware of our common connection. And near-death experiences say things like, we're all connected. We're more connected than separate. And because of that, if you bring hope or joy to just one soul, millions receive the benefit. One person living in unconditional love is more powerful than millions living in fear. Mother Teresa said, we can't always do great things, but we can all do small things with great love. And that's all it takes. You don't have to write a book. You don't have to have a podcast. I mean, this podcast where you bring a message of light and love and the afterlife to people, that is amazing. You reach so many people, but that's not necessary to change the world. All you have to do to change the world is just be the best version of you possible. Now, you're going to fail sometimes. I fail all the time, but I still keep trying and I still keep improving. And it means the smallest acts of kindness, whether it's saying please or thank you. One of the things I do is after every meal, I get up and I walk over to my wife and I hug her and I say, thank you for cooking me a good meal. I love you. I appreciate you. Or holding the door open, or smiling at a stranger, or saying, I really appreciate you, or thank you for doing this for me. Or some people volunteer and they work in a soup kitchen, or it can be something as small as picking up a piece of trash. Every kind thought, every gentle word, every compassionate act, no matter how small, becomes a pillar of beauty. Energetically becomes a pillar of beauty, both on this earth and in the life to come. It doesn't take much to change the world. It just takes one person to start being loving, and it ripples out. You brighten one person's day and they're nicer to the people around them. It's a beautiful effect.
Yeah, that's true. Love, I believe that love is what we really need, to conquer every challenges. Once there's love, most of these things just fades away. But another question I want to quickly ask is, listening to somebody yesterday, and he said that we decide what we're going to be when we come to Earth, that our life are pre-planned. So I was like, you mean some people just plan their life that they're going to come to Earth and they're going to suffer from when they're born to when they die? I still find it hard to digest that information. So I would like to know what you think about that.
All right. Well, let me ask you a question. You got a nice house and it's comfortable and maybe has air conditioning and heating and you're real comfortable. You have everything you need there? Yeah. Well, do you want to be in that comfortable situation all the time? Well, no. Sometimes maybe you want to grow. Maybe you want to get stronger. You want to become a better runner or improve the condition of your heart. What do you got to do? You got to leave the comfort of your home and you got to go out and run. And you're going to suffer when you run. And if you want to take on a really big challenge, you're going to climb Mount Everest and you're going to really suffer. We did not come to this planet to suffer. Nobody climbs Mount Everest because they said, I wanted to suffer. They did it for the challenge. They did it to grow. They did it to to get stronger, and now they're ready for an even bigger adventure. We choose these lives. We choose parents. We choose the major events in our life. We choose usually when we're going to die and how. Some people choose a very difficult life, just like some people choose a very difficult hike. Mount Everest is not an easy hike. People die trying. And so we are not victims. We know all the potentials before we come here. We know how tough it's going to be. Now, some people, it's just like in a vacation itinerary. Some people say if there's pre-life planning, then we don't have free will. No, it's like a vacation itinerary. You plan your vacation out, and you usually stick to the itinerary. It's pretty rare that somebody says, I'm going to spend a week in Paris, and after one day they go, this isn't for me. I'm going to Tahiti. You can do that if you want. You can always deviate from your plan. But yeah, there's a pre-life planning process. You sit down with some sort of older, more advanced souls. I don't like using that term, but there's no old age in heaven. Everybody's young, beautiful. But and you plan out a life. You pick your parents. You pick some of the major events, and then a lot of the smaller details are filled in. And you can always deviate from that plan if you want. You have free will. The highest law of heaven, of creation, is free will. So we always have free will.
Okay.
Whether those choices are good or bad.
If you say we choose our free will, what about the pains we go through? I lost my first son, and it's been 11 years ago, but I still feel the pain till today. So was that my decision, or was that my son's decision? Because what about what I do if I decide that if I die today, it's not really going to affect me much. It's going to affect the people I leave behind, because they're the ones going to be mourning. So how does my decision affect others? So like the example I gave, I lost my son. So was that my own decision that I want to come to this earth and lose my son? Or was it my son's decision that, okay, I'm coming to this earth, I'm going to die young?
So some souls may only want to choose a 21-year life or a 40-year life or whatever. I mean, when you go out for a walk, you often decide how long you want to walk, right? You don't normally go out for a walk for 10 minutes and stay out 2 hours, or decide to have a 2-hour walk and you leave after 10 minutes. So yeah, people normally choose the length of their life. So it was both your decision. So souls are in soul groups on the other side of the veil. They're like friends that hang out and get together and do things together. Well, there's these soul groups that incarnate into lives. Okay, we're going to incarnate, and this time you're going to be my dad, and I'm going to be the son, and you're going to lose me at a certain age, and you're going to have to go through that pain, and you're going to learn from it. So you both planned it. That's the short answer. And I am very sorry for the loss of your son. I've heard and I don't have my own children. I have children through my wife's family, but I've heard there's no greater pain than losing a child. And the fact that you most likely chose this challenge for this lifetime shows that you're an advanced soul, and we're never given challenges that we're incapable of overcoming. And I've had some doozies in my life, nothing as drastic or as painful as losing a child, but I had some painful moments. And now looking back, many years later, I can see how I grew through those moments. It is at our times when we are suffering the most, when we're growing the most. And that's just the nature of doing things spiritually. So it's just like walking. If I want to walk from where I am here, if I want to get on foot from where I am to a mile away, I can go slow. I can take a leisurely walk, and it'll take me 20, 25 minutes, and it's comfortable. But if I want to go fast, if I want to run, I'm going to be uncomfortable. I'm going to suffer, but I make a lot of progress very shortly. Well, Earth is like one of the fastest, hardcore learning school adventures to grow and develop. I mean, a lot of souls want to come here, and you got to be a good expert soul to take on Earth. So for every 100 that want to come, only one makes it. I mean, that's, it's a tough place to be, and you took on a tough challenge. Yeah. But it was a noble one, and it was not for nothing. And when we say gone, well, did I lose my mother in 2014? Well, no, I know where she is, and I'm going to see her again. So she's not really lost. We just have the illusion of losing them. And there is a benefit to that, to our soul.
Sometimes I ask myself, what is the purpose of this age? What are we really doing here? Because sometimes I just feel that all we do is just struggle. Even those that seems to be doing well, that seems to have money, but we are all just kind of struggling in our own different ways. So sometimes I really ask myself, what are we really doing here? Is this really worth it? With all the pains and all the anger and everything in this world. That's what I found myself. I find myself, and I think that I'm in a good situation in life. At least I'm not hungry, I'm not homeless, I have kids, I'm married, compared to some of my schoolmates who are in their 40s. They still don't have they still haven't not married. They don't even have jobs. So I think I'm in a good situation compared to some others, but still I find myself asking myself these questions. So, and I wonder, what about if I were even in other shoes, that those that are homeless, those that I'm not even sure what they're going to eat tomorrow. So these are some of the questions that I ask myself. What are we doing here? What is the purpose of being here?
Well, I was shown in a vision, this wasn't from near-death experiencers or trance channelers or anything. I was shown in a vision a metaphor for the process of creation. They told me from my earthly perspective, I can't understand it, and all they can do is give me a metaphor. But it's basically, you can't have an up without a down. You can't have a light without a dark. You can't have a left without a right. So by dipping down to darkness and experiencing what we don't want, it strengthens what we do want. So I'll give an example. I've talked about this example before on other channels and guest appearances. If you are a child who grew up in a home and your parents own a 5-star restaurant that's world famous, and best food in the world, people come from all over the world to eat at this restaurant, but you've eaten every meal there for your entire life. And you hear these people come and talk like, oh, wow, what an amazing meal. Oh, this was so good. And you're going, what are they talking about? It's just food. It seems normal to you. Well, how can you experience what they're experiencing? How can you strengthen that emotion? Well, you have to experience the opposite of that good food. So you can do it quickly by not eating any food for 3 days. And then it doesn't matter what you eat. Even if it's something you don't like, it's going to taste great. If you want to do it slow without so much pain, eat lousy food for a year, mediocre food for a year, and then go back to the restaurant. It'll taste really good. That's basically a metaphor for what we're doing here. We are the engine of growth of creation. We're holding and growing the space that love exists by experiencing the opposite of love. We are strengthening the connection with each other by having the illusion of being disconnected, of being individuals. We're not going to understand it from our earthly perspective, but I do know it's important to trust in the process and that we're never meant to suffer in vain. There is a benefit to everything we go through down here, these difficult lives.
Can you please tell us more about your work and your books and how people can reach you?
But yeah, you can buy my book on Amazon, Barnes & Noble. It's on Kindle and Nook. It's even on Books A Million. If you're interested in the book, on my website, godtookmyclothes.com, there is a free preview of the book. You can read the first 2 chapters so you can decide, if it's the kind of book you want. And if you speak Spanish, the entire book is there in Spanish. And there's also a link to my spiritual counseling, where you can click on that link and make an appointment if you want to talk about your near-death experience or you're just having a spiritual awakening. And of course, if you have any questions, my email is on the website, godtookmyclothes.com, and you can email me. And at this moment, I'm still answering all emails with audio messages. It's been getting busier and busier and harder to do that. So there may be a delay, but right now I'm still answering all questions. But thanks for having me on the show. And I just want to say to your listeners and to you, thank you for continuing to spread your light and love and making the world a better place.